In this video, we're going to learn about the electromagnetic spectrum. You can watch this preview video here before you watch this one. It gives you a little bit of an overview of what the electromagnetic spectrum is if you need to learn the vocabulary ahead of time. Here are our learning goals. Then on the next few slides, we'll learn about the electromagnetic spectrum. So as a quick little review, remember that light is energy, and it's a form of energy that travels as a wave specifically. So we often call light an electromagnetic wave, which basically just means a form of energy that travels like a wave. So here we can see two examples of waves. We have a wave over here and a wave over here. Let's move this out of the way here. So what you'll notice is that these two waves are both waves, but they look a little bit different. They have some different characteristics, and that's what makes them different types of light. So for now, we'll just focus on the characteristics of the waves, and then later on we'll see how that relates to the different types of light. You can measure what's called a wavelength. A wavelength is how long the wave is from one point to another point on that wave, a similar point. So from this top to that top, from this top to this top, or from this bottom point to that bottom point. That's called a wavelength. This wavelength is longer than this wavelength. So you can have long wavelengths and you can have short wavelengths. You also have what's called frequency. The frequency is, before we go to that, let's talk about how we measure wavelength. Wavelength is measured in nanometers, a very small unit, nm, nanometers. If you want to picture a nanometer, if you had something that was a nanometer large right over here, next to the tennis ball would look like the size of Earth. That's how small a nanometer is. So frequency is how often a wave repeats itself. So picture this line here as an amount of time. Pretend it's 10 seconds. This is 10 seconds, and so is this. You can see that this wave repeats itself many times within that 10-second line. Whereas over here, this wave does not repeat itself as many times. So we can see a relationship between wavelength and frequency. We can see that they're inversely proportional. Inverse means opposite. So they essentially go in opposite directions. The bigger the wavelength, the smaller the frequency. So as one goes up, the other goes down. But the smaller the wavelength, the higher the frequency. So they go in opposite directions. And that makes sense because a smaller wavelength means you can fit more in that 10-second time frame than a larger wavelength. It takes longer to do a whole wave if it's a big wave. And so these are characteristics of waves that we can measure, and because light is a form of energy that travels as a wave, light will have wavelengths and frequencies. This image here just shows you the size of a nanometer, looking at the atomic level all the way up to the level of the tennis ball. So we're going to focus now on the electromagnetic spectrum. This here is the electromagnetic spectrum. It's simply the different types of light. So the spectrum means a collection of things. And so we have a collection of different types of light here. They are the radio waves, microwaves, infrared waves, visible light, ultraviolet, X-rays, and then gamma rays. So you can see that the radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible, ultraviolet, and X-rays and gamma rays all differ in terms of characteristics of the waves. Before we go into those details though, I want to divide light into two general categories. There's the visible spectrum and there's the invisible spectrum. So the visible spectrum, that means the light that you can see. And the invisible spectrum, that's the light that you can't see. So there's a lot of light we actually can't see but that we still use on a daily basis. The only portion of this electromagnetic spectrum here that we can see is this small portion here called the visible spectrum that happens between the 400 nanometer and the 700 nanometer range. Those numbers refer to the wavelengths. So the spectrum is organized according to wavelengths. We can see we go from long to short wavelength here. You can also think of it as low frequency here, higher frequency here. And the invisible spectrum is all the other light. So radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. They are the portions that humans cannot see. And the visible portion is made up of all the different colors of light that you would see in a rainbow. So you would have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So this is a sample problem here. So I want you to think for a minute, read the question, pause the video, try to answer it, and then when you're done, you can unpause the video and you can check your work. So in this question, you had to categorize diagram A, B, and C as either visible, infra, and X-rays. You'll notice that they differed in terms of their wavelengths. You had very small wavelengths here, larger wavelengths here, and then somewhere in between wavelengths here. So the ones that have the smallest wavelengths between X-ray, infra, and visible light would have been diagram C. Then after that, the largest wavelength would have been infrared light, so that would have been diagram B, and then the in-between would be visible light over here. So we're looking at B is infrared, A is visible, and X-rays are C, and that's based on the wavelength knowledge that we have. You should remember the order of the light on the spectrum from longest to shortest or shortest to longest wavelength. You can use a memory aid called a mnemonic. Here's one that is often used. Ronald McDonald invented very ugly Xmas games. And this is the order of light from longest wavelength to shortest wavelength. We have the radio waves, the microwaves, the infrared waves, the visible light, the UV light, the X-rays, and the gamma rays. So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect wavelength and frequency to energy of light, because as you know, light is a form of energy. So just as a reminder, the longest wavelength to shortest wavelength would be radio all the way to gamma. And what I want you to understand is that wavelength and energy are inversely proportional, meaning that the longer the wave, the smaller the energy. Because if you think about it, it doesn't repeat itself as much within a time frame. So it would have less energy since it's not repeating as much. The relationship between frequency and energy is that they're directly proportional. Directly means they go in the same direction. So the higher the frequency, the more the energy. So in other words, the longer the wavelength or the lower the frequency, the less energy there is in it. The shorter the wavelength, in other words, the higher the frequency, the more energy there is in it. The best way to memorize this is to choose one of the ways to look at it. So for example, look at it in terms of wavelength. If you remember, long wavelength has low energy, then high wavelength has high energy. Or then short wavelength has high energy. So just remember one way rather than both ways. And then you can connect the wavelength to the frequency. So which color of light or which type of light has the most energy? Well, you have to think about which one is the shortest wavelength. And from the shortest wavelength or highest frequency, it would be gamma rays. So gamma rays would have the most energy. Which have the least energy? Well, it's the one with the longest wavelength or the lowest frequency. And so the longest wavelength would be the radio waves, or the lowest frequency, again, the radio waves. So you should be able to classify light based on wavelength, frequency, and energy. Now here are different applications of different types of light on the electromagnetic spectrum. You don't have to memorize all of these, but you should memorize 2 of each. And you'll notice that even though many forms of light are invisible to us, they are very useful. So radio waves are used for AM, FM radio signals, TV signals, cell phone signals, all things that you use on a daily basis. Microwaves are used for actual microwaves and other form of telecommunications. Infrared are actually used for remote controls, in lasers, also heat detection, even in physical therapy. You can see visible light, that's more intuitive. You use it for human vision, visible lasers, rainbows. Ultraviolet light, that's light from the sun. It can cause sunburns and skin cancer, but it's also very important for a variety of things like helping to stimulate the production of vitamin D within the body. It can be used to sterilize food and water. You can actually use the UV light to kill bacteria within food and water. X-rays, we use them to take X-rays, so medical imaging, right? That relates to biology. Gamma rays can also be used to treat cancer. You can aim gamma rays, since they're so high energy, at cancer cells to actually kill them. So what is expected of you is that you understand at least 2 applications from each of these forms of light. We're going to take a look at visible light now. So we've seen the entire spectrum, the entire electromagnetic spectrum. So now we'll take a look at just that portion that we can actually see. So the visible light, we actually call it white light. So the light you see from the sun or a light bulb is called white light. Now, when we see it come out of the light bulb or the sun, we actually think it's white. Now, really to you it might appear yellow, but it's actually white light. It's not really made up of white light. It's actually made up of all these different colors here. But when it first comes out from the sun or a light bulb, you actually can't tell that those colors are there. Your brain can't tell them apart from each other because they're so close together. Your brain just kind of gives up and mixes them all together. But the different colors of the white light are the Roy G. Biv colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And that is a range from longest wavelength to shortest. Red being 700 and then violet being 400 nanometers. Which means that red has the lowest energy and violet has the highest energy because violet has the shortest wavelength and therefore highest frequency. So that's important to remember. You don't have to remember the exact numbers here, but you should know the order of Roy G. Biv, that red's at the 700 end, violet is at the 400 end, and what that means about the amount of energy in that light. That's why, for example, if you look at a laser pointer that's blue, that you might have seen in the demo, it's a bit more dangerous for your eyes than a laser pointer that's on the red end, because the blue end has more energy in it compared to the red end. So you can actually separate the colors of white light in a variety of ways. If you were in class, you might have seen the demo with these glasses here. These are called diffraction grating glasses. Basically on the inside of the glasses, there's these little slits, very, very small spaces. When white light goes through it, it causes the colors of the white light to separate as they go through the slits, and that allows your eyes to see all the different colors. You can also use a prism. A prism is basically a piece of glass or plastic that causes white light to bend. The different colors of white light bend at different angles, which causes them to separate a bit, and that separation allows us to see the different colors of the light. This actually happens when rainbows form, except in the sky you don't quite have a glass prism or a plastic prism, but you have raindrops, which are able to bend the light enough for you to see all the different colors. If you were in class, we did an activity with this device called a ray box, which basically allows you to you plug it in and white light comes out, and we aimed white light at the prism in order to create rainbows. To finish off, let's connect this to biology a little bit. So remember that plants do photosynthesis, and they use light to do that. Here you can see white light being split and all the different colors of light going through a chloroplast from within a plant cell. And the question we have is, which color of light is not being used in photosynthesis, and how do you know? So you can take a look at these pictures, try to answer that question, pause the video, and then unpause when you're ready. At the same time, you can try to answer this question: can you explain why leaves are green? If you look over here, what we're hoping for in the first answer is that you can see that all the other colors of light are being absorbed. The only one that's not being absorbed seems to be the green. The green is either going through completely or being reflected. So from that we can tell that since the chloroplast is not absorbing the green, that it's probably not using the green as much in photosynthesis. And then why are leaves green? Should fix this typo here. The different colors of light hit the leaves. Those different colors of light are absorbed by the leaf, but the green light is not absorbed, it's reflected into your eyes, and that's what you see. So if there's something that's red, for example, like a red shirt, if you look at the red shirt, it's going to absorb all the other colors, but it's going to reflect red, and that red is what you see. This is a summary of the electromagnetic spectrum that we saw in this video, and this is these are some guiding questions to help you think about how you want to summarize your this lesson in the lab notebook according to your teacher directions. Try to think about connections between optics and other units that we've seen in the course so far. You can also complete your learning goals and anything in the worksheets provided.